Hello and welcome back to this tutorial on animating shapes. We just learned in the last lesson about if statements, a really powerful way to make decisions in your program. And now we're going to use that to create something that I think is going to look pretty cool. It is a sunrise and a sunset. So let's get started by clicking on sunrise and sunset. And as always, let's check out what happens when we run the starter code. So when we do it, ooh, look at that. It looks like we've got some water down the bottom. We've got the yellowy sky and then our sun in the middle. Now what I want to do is I want to animate this sun so that it moves from the top, from the middle down, 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 down and goes below the water. And then I want it to kind of reappear over the other side and then go back up to where it is. So we want a sunset, maybe sleep for a bit, and then a sunrise. So let's firstly take a look at the code and then figure out how we can add this sunset to it. So we're setting the canvas size to 800 pixels wide, 400 pixels high. We're setting an X and a Y variable. So in our last animation, we only updated the X position of the ball. In this one, we're going to actually update the X and the Y because we want the sun moving diagonally. So X is initially set to 400 and Y is also set to 400. Then we've got our forever loop. And that means everything that's underneath and indented repeats forever. Now you can see the comments are really helpful here. So on line 6, you can see we are drawing the sky. So we're setting that fill color to that yellowy sky color. And then we're just drawing a rectangle for the sky. And then we draw the sun, and you can see we set the color of the sun on line 11. Then on line 12, the circle, we draw it, the center of the circle at X, Y. And that's our variable. So initially that's at 400, 400, and it has a radius of 50 pixels. Then we draw the water, and then we sleep, and then we're repeating. So even though there's no animation here, notice that the program is still running. My stop button here is showing, so the program's still running. It's actually clearing the screen, then redrawing this, clearing the screen, redrawing it. But we can't see any movement yet because we haven't programmed any movement. So let's do that. Let's get the sun moving. So I'm going to stop my code so I can actually edit it. Now, maybe just before I draw the sun is where I want to animate the sun, and that means moving it. Now, because I'm drawing it at X, Y, I can animate the sun just by saying X equals X plus 1. And so now, every time through this loop, X is moving to the right 1. So let's try and run that and see what happens. There we go, my sun's just going across. But I want it to go down as well. So that's why I have the Y variable. So I can also update the Y variable. So Y equals Y plus 1. Now, every time through the loop, X will update by 1 and Y will update by 1. Now, I put a plus 1. I think I've made a mistake here. Let's just see. So start, yeah, look at that. The sun is going upwards because remember, Y is up. So I need Y to come down. So I need Y equals Y minus 1. And now, look at this, the sun comes down. And notice what happened. It went behind the water. Now, why did it go behind the water? It's all to do with the order I'm drawing things in. I drew the sky first, which is this yellow section here. Then I drew the sun, and then I drew the water over the top of it, so the water comes last. If I change this position of the water and I drew it before the sun, then look what would happen. The sun would go in front of the water, and that doesn't look as good. So let me undo those changes and yeah, put the water back, and now the sun goes behind the water. Very cool. Now, here's where I'm going to need to use those if conditions, because I want to check if the sun has gone off the screen. Maybe I want to set it back over to the left, but also maybe I want to just sleep for a couple of seconds because I don't want the sun setting and rising immediately. I want it to set it to stay, when the sun sets, it stays dark for a little period of time. So let's do that. Once I've moved it, I can check. Now, how do I know when the sun's gone completely off the screen? Well, our screen is 800 pixels wide, and so maybe when x is greater than 800, that will be good enough. Because it's kind of going down, I think that's going to work. Let's try it. Here we go. So I'm going to stop the code so I can edit my program. And I'm going to say, if x is greater than 800. Now, when it's greater than 800, if that's true, then I want to set x equal to 0. And let's just check what this is going to do. So remember, it's 800 wide. My screen is 800 wide. So when it's greater than 800, it's actually not completely off the screen, but because I've got the water here, I think that's going to be okay. And then I'm going to start my sun at 0, 0 here and have it go up for the sunrise. And then it comes down. So I think that is actually going to work all right. So what I want to do is, if x is greater than 800, set x equal to 0 and also set y equal to 0. And then I think that's going to work, but there is a little bit of a problem here, isn't there? Because now I want the sun going up rather than coming down. So let's just run this, and I think we'll see the sun go off the screen, but we don't see it coming back, because what's happening is I am setting my sun to 0, 0, so to over here, but then I'm actually just moving my sun down and further off the screen. So instead of updating 1 by -1, now I need to update it by +1. So I really need to kind of keep track of whether I want to go up or down. So let's create another variable for this. What a great idea. Maybe I can call it the y direction. So let's create here another variable at the start of our program and call it the y direction, and we're going to set that equal to -1 initially, because remember the sun starts in the center and we're having it come down. So y_dir equals -1, and then instead of saying y equals y -1, I can say y equals y plus y_dir. And if I add a -1, it's going to come down. So I think, let's check it out. What should be happening now is, yeah, the sun comes down, but we haven't changed that y_dir, so it keeps coming down. So what I need to do is say, if x is greater than 100, x equals 0, y equals 0, and now y_dir equals a +1. I think we're making some cool progress here. The sun comes down, goes off the screen. Now it's coming back up, and it just continued forever going off the screen, didn't it? So now we've got a little issue. What's happening is, let's draw another canvas. We start off our sun here. It comes down to here, and once it's greater than 800, we set it back over to the left and we change the direction, but now we keep it going forever and we've got no if statement. So the sun keeps going until it is greater than 800 over here, and then we set it back to here. So now it just keeps doing this loop, and it's not coming back down, but we want, see, so it comes down, now it goes up, and now it keeps going up and it never comes back down, but I want it to come back down. So let's see, when do I want it to come back down? Once it's reached this 400, I want it to start coming back down again. So what I can do is, I can say here, if x is greater than, or actually, you know what? It's only at the point when it's equal to. So here's another thing we need to learn. I've used the greater than symbol before. Now, if I want to check if a variable is equal to another variable, I need to say if x, and I need to put a double equals here, 400, and then a colon. So this double equals is important. Why do I use a double equals? It's used for comparison because when I'm just using a normal equals, I say x equals 400 at the start of my program. I use a single equals is the assignment operator. And this is important. The single equals is the assignment operator. So that means take 400 and store it in the variable x. But if I want to compare something, I don't want to use the assignment operator. I don't want to be putting 400 into X here. I want to do a check. So Python, to make sure there's a difference between assignment and checking, says when we're checking, if something is equal to or has that value, we use the double equals operator. Okay, so this is like the equivalence operator. We're checking if X has the value 400. So over here, I say if X is equal to 400, then what I want to do is I want to set the y_dir equal to -1. I don't want to change anything else because we still want to update X by 1 and the Y we're updating by this y_dir, so it'll just start making it come back down the screen. Let's try it. So it should now come down and then should go up. Once it hits there, it should start coming back down again. Great. Now we've got this continuous sunrise and sunset. Now the only thing I'd like to do here is when the sun comes back down, I think it should wait a bit longer because it should be, the sun should be set for a bit longer period of time. So if X is greater than 100, this is when the sun is fully set. Then we change all this stuff, but I'm also just going to say sleep for like 2 seconds. So now it should come down, it'll go off, then 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Now it'll start coming back up again. Cool. Okay, we've made some great progress. We've got our sun setting, then our sun rising. But now what I want to do is as the sun sets, I want the whole scene to get darker. And as the sun rises, I want the whole scene to get lighter. Now when we specify a color, we can specify the amount of red, green, and blue, but there's also a fourth parameter, the opacity or how see-through the color is. So if I was to set the color to full, so 1 for that fourth parameter, the opacity, then it's not see-through at all. So it's just that color. But if I set it to say 0.5, then it's half see-through and I can see whatever's behind it. So if I drew a black background behind it and then sort of made it half opacity, I would see some of that black. And if I actually take it down to 0 opacity, then I would only see what's behind it. So if I have black behind it, it will look black. So what I'm going to do is try and do that. So I'm going to, at the start, set the background each time throughout the loop to black. So I use the background command and I specify 0, 0, 0 for the color black. Now, this won't change anything because I'm drawing everything over this black. So at the moment, if I run this, then nothing changes. But, here we saw the water went black for a little bit. Interesting. That's after our sleep, wasn't it? Why is the water suddenly going black? Oh, I know why. Because of my sleep for 2 seconds here before I draw the water. So I really don't want this sleep in here for 2 seconds. Because that's actually sleeping, and so you're seeing the black background and then I draw the water. So yeah, if I want to have this, instead of pausing, and I probably shouldn't pause in the middle of a loop here. So instead of doing the sleep here, what I'm going to do is just say, instead of if X is greater than 800, I'm just going to let it go another 400. Or maybe I'll just make it 1,000. So if X is greater than 1,000, so I'm going to let that go off the bottom of the screen and then keep going further and further off the bottom of the screen. And only when it's way past the edge will I come back. So this should have the same effect. It goes off and then now the ball's going further and further off and then it comes back up. Yeah, cool. But I'm not sleeping in the middle of that animation loop for a long period of time. Great. That's better. I like that. Okay, so now I've got the black background. Now I need some way to change this alpha of this sky. I want the sky to get darker and darker. So I need a variable. So let's try and call one. Let's call it the alpha and set that equal to 1. So it's fully, it's not transparent at all. And then when I'm drawing the sky here, in this fill color, I add the fourth parameter, which is the alpha. And again, because the alpha is set to 1 now, this should not change my program. I should be able to run this and yep, exactly the same. But now what I want to do is each time through the loop here, I want to say alpha equals alpha. Let's drop it by 0.01 and see what that does. So, yeah, oh look, it got dark really quick. I think I want to do it by 0.001. And now it's getting darker and darker and darker. Yeah, that's good. The only trouble is it just keeps on getting darker and darker. So, what I probably want to do is do some other check. The y direction that we created, that variable, if that is negative, like less than 0, -1, then the sun's going down. If it's +1, the sun's going up. So I can say, check this out. If y_dir is equal to -1, then we're going down. So then I want the alpha to be going down, getting darker. So if the y_dir is less than -1, that's going down. And then I can have another if statement. If the y_dir is equivalent to 1, then the alpha should equal the alpha plus 0.001. All right, now let's see. So as we're coming down, it gets darker and darker, and then as we're coming up, it gets lighter and lighter. Now that is cool. I like that. I think it's going just maybe slightly too slow. So I wonder if I change this to be twice the speed. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, that is cool. That is very cool. Liking that. Now, I think the water should also get darker at that same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this water also have an alpha, the same alpha, and then we should see the whole scene getting darker. Oh, wow. And the sun kind of then comes up from behind. That is interesting. And as we leave it, the problem is we should set, once we go back here, because we are, notice how it just got darker and darker, because we're only changing the y direction after 1000, the sun's actually going down for a lot further. So when we get back to setting it back to 0, 0, we should also set the alpha back to 0 because it's going to be a lot lower. So it's not getting a chance to go back up as fast. So what I mean by that is we start the alpha at the value of 1, and then we go across till x is greater than 1000. So we've gone across 600. So we've taken alpha down by minus 0.002 600 times. But then when we set it back to here, we only increase it plus 0.002 400 times. So it doesn't get back to where it was. So we should just set it back to 0 here, and then it will go up in a much better way. Let's try that. So alpha equals 0, and now I think that's going to get a better sunset and a better sunrise. Yeah, nearly back to full color, not quite. And then we shouldn't see the sun, should we? We shouldn't see the sun go behind. Once the sun goes behind the water, we shouldn't see it at all. Yeah, so I hadn't anticipated this problem, but as you can see, when we come down here, the sun is, we can see it, because this is all transparent, the water is now transparent, we can see the sun. So what I'm thinking is, what we'll do is, we will just draw the sun, and then we'll draw the black rectangle where the water is, and then we'll draw the blue water over the top of it. So then we'll never see the sun at all because we're drawing a black rectangle over that part of it. So we're going to have to, after we've drawn the sun, draw a black rectangle over here, which means we won't see the sun, and then we can draw the transparent water over the top of it. That will work better. So for the water, we're going to have to set a fill to 0, 0, 0, which is black. And then we are going to draw a rectangle the size of the water. So 0, 0, 800, 100. That just draws the black rectangle. And then we set the color to the watercolor, but with the transparency. So then we'll see through to it, but we won't see the sun. So now, here we go, sun comes down and it disappears behind there. When it comes back up, now that's looking good. Awesome. Now, here, this alpha, we've just changed it by some amount, minus 0.002 that we've worked out. There is a really cool function if you're interested in making this better. I'm not going to do this, but as an extension, have a look on the reference page. So if you go to the reference page on PyAngelo, reference, and look for map to range, Here we go. And then this function takes in a value. So we could take in like the X position, specify the values that can take on, and then map it to a range. So we could take the possible X values and map it to an alpha range between 0 and 1. And that way, we wouldn't have to worry about the specific mass. So if you're keen, have a look at that map to range and see if you can get that to work for you. But that's it, we are done. We have got our sunrise and our sunset. So let's take one last look at that. So there we have it, our sun setting, then our sun rising. So we've used a lot of the concepts that we've learned so far. The loops, that forever loop, that animation loop. We've used the if statement where you need a condition or a Boolean condition that has to be true or false. And only if that condition is true do we execute the code that is underneath and indented. So that gives us a way of doing decisions. If the sun's gone off the edge of the screen, then run this bit of code. And then we also use the opacity a bit more, those colors, and that can be really show some creative ways to get some interesting effects. Awesome, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.